The history of coffee is long and fascinating, spanning centuries and continents. Here's an overview of how coffee first became known and how it spread globally, eventually becoming one of the most popular beverages worldwide. Origins of coffee. 9th century. Discovery in Ethiopia. The earliest known origin of coffee dates back to the 9th century in the region that is now Ethiopia. According to legend, an Ethiopian goatherder named Kaldi noticed that his goats became unusually energetic after eating the red berries from a certain tree, the coffee plant. Kaldi shared his discovery with a local monastery, where monks found that brewing the berries into a drink helped them stay awake during long prayers. This story, though anecdotal, illustrates the earliest known use of coffee. Yemen. The first cultivation, 15th century, coffee spread from Ethiopia to the Arabian Peninsula, specifically to Yemen. By the 15th century, Sufi monks in Yemen were drinking coffee to help them stay alert during late-night devotions. Yemen became the first region to cultivate coffee plants, and the port city of Mocha became a major center for the coffee trade, hence, the term, mocha, often associated with coffee. Yemeni traders spread coffee throughout the Islamic world. Coffee spreads to the Middle East, Persia, and North Africa. 16th century, expansion across the Islamic world. By the 16th century, coffee had spread across the Middle East, Persia, Iran, and North Africa. It became a popular drink in cities like Mecca, Cairo, and Istanbul. Coffeehouses, known as kava khane, emerged as important social centers where people gathered to drink coffee, socialize, listen to music, and engage in discussions. These coffeehouses were sometimes called schools of the wise, due to the intellectual discussions that took place there. Ottoman Empire influence. Coffee was introduced to the Ottoman Empire in the mid-16th century, and the first coffeehouses were opened in Istanbul in the 1550s. The Ottomans played a crucial role in spreading coffee throughout the Middle East and Europe through trade routes. Coffee arrives in Europe. 17th century. Introduction to Europe. Coffee arrived in Europe in the early 17th century through Venetian and other European traders who brought it back from the Ottoman Empire. At first, coffee was met with suspicion by some Christians, who referred to it as the bitter invention of Satan, because of its Islamic associations. However, it gained popularity rapidly once Pope Clement VIII allegedly baptized coffee around 1600, declaring it a suitable drink for Christians. First European coffeehouses. The first European coffeehouses appeared in Venice in the early 1600s, and coffee soon spread to other cities. Coffee houses opened in England, Oxford and London, France, Paris, and Italy, Venice. By the mid-17th century, they had become popular social hubs, similar to those in the Middle East. In England, they were often called penny universities, because for the price of a penny, people could get a cup of coffee and engage in intellectual discussions. 1660s, Paris and London coffeehouses. The first coffeehouse in Paris, called Café Procope, opened in 1686 and became a center for Enlightenment thinkers such as Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In London, coffeehouses became places where political discussions flourished, and they played a role in the development of the stock market and the insurance industry, with Lloyd's of London originally being a coffeehouse. Coffee expands to the Americas. 17th century, Dutch traders and coffee cultivation. In the 17th century, Dutch traders smuggled coffee plants out of the Arab world and began cultivating them in their colonies. By the late 1600s, coffee was being grown on the island of Java, Indonesia, which became one of the most famous coffee-producing regions. The Dutch also introduced coffee to the Caribbean and South America through their colonial networks. 18th century. Coffee in the Americas. In the 18th century, French and Portuguese colonial powers began to cultivate coffee in the Americas. In 1720, French naval officer Gabriel de Clieu brought coffee plants to the French colony of Martinique in the Caribbean, which became a key center for coffee production in the New World. Brazil's rise as a coffee power. 19th century. Brazil started cultivating coffee in the early 18th century, and by the 19th century, it became the world's largest coffee producer. The rise of Brazilian coffee plantations made coffee more widely available and affordable, leading to a boom in global consumption. Global spread and modern consumption. 19th century, industrialization and coffee popularity. The 19th century saw the rapid growth of coffee consumption, especially in Europe and North America, as industrialization created a demand for stimulant beverages like coffee to help workers stay alert. Coffee was now a daily drink for many people across the globe. Coffee houses and cafes became more common, evolving into important social spaces for the public. 20th century, globalization and mass consumption. In the 20th century, coffee became a staple drink in households across the world, particularly in the West. Companies like Nestlé and Starbucks helped to globalize coffee culture even further. Instant coffee became popular in the mid-20th century, making coffee more accessible and easy to prepare for everyday people. The rise of coffee chains. The late 20th century and early 21st century saw the rise of global coffee chains like Starbucks, which popularized new ways of consuming coffee, such as espresso-based drinks, lattes, cappuccinos, etc. Specialty coffee culture also took off, with an emphasis on high-quality, ethically sourced beans from regions such as Ethiopia, Colombia, and Kenya. Global coffee consumption today. 21st century. Coffee in every corner of the world. Today, coffee is one of the most consumed beverages worldwide, with countless varieties, preparations, and cultural rituals. The third wave coffee movement focuses on artisanal, high-quality coffee beans, sustainable farming practices, and direct trade with coffee farmers. Coffee culture has exploded globally, from traditional Italian espresso bars to trendy third-wave cafes in major cities across the world. Cultural variations. Coffee is prepared and enjoyed differently around the world. In Italy, espresso is a staple, while in Turkey, Turkish coffee is a strong, unfiltered brew. In Vietnam, iced coffee with sweetened condensed milk, coffee sua da, is popular, and in Ethiopia, the coffee ceremony is an integral part of social life. Timeline recap. 1. 9th century. Discovery of coffee in Ethiopia. 2. 15th century. cultivation and spread in Yemen, the first coffeehouses in the Islamic world. 3. 16th century. Coffee spreads across the Middle East, Persia, and North Africa. 4. 17th century. Coffee arrives in Europe through Venetian and Dutch traders. 5. Mid-17th century. Coffeehouses became popular in cities like London, Paris, and Venice. 6. The late 1600s, early 1700s. Coffee cultivation spreads to the Dutch East Indies, Java, the Caribbean, and South America. 7. 19th century. Brazil becomes the leading coffee producer, fueling global coffee consumption. 8. 20th century. Coffee becomes a global commodity with the rise of instant coffee and international coffee chains. 9. 21st century. The third wave coffee movement emphasizes quality, sustainability, and artisanal brewing methods. Coffee has evolved from a local stimulant used in religious practices in Ethiopia and Yemen to a global phenomenon enjoyed by billions daily, and its cultural significance continues to grow. Benefits of coffee. Increased alertness and energy. The caffeine in coffee boosts alertness and improves focus by stimulating the central nervous system. Enhanced physical performance. Coffee can improve physical endurance and performance by increasing adrenaline levels, making it popular among athletes. Rich in antioxidants. Coffee is a major source of antioxidants, which combat oxidative stress and inflammation, potentially reducing the risk of chronic diseases. Reduced risk of certain diseases. Studies suggest that coffee may lower the risk of diseases like type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and certain types of cancer due to its antioxidant content and anti-inflammatory effects. Supports heart health. Moderate coffee consumption has been linked to a reduced risk of stroke and heart disease. Improved mental health. Coffee may help reduce the risk of depression and lower suicide rates, likely due to its stimulant effects and influence on neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Side effects of coffee. Sleep disruption. Consuming coffee, especially late in the day, can interfere with sleep quality and lead to insomnia due to its stimulating effects. Anxiety and jitters. High doses of caffeine can cause anxiety, nervousness, and restlessness, especially in those sensitive to caffeine. Digestive issues. Coffee can stimulate the production of stomach acid, which may cause acid reflux, heartburn, or digestive discomfort in some people. Increased heart rate and blood pressure. Caffeine may temporarily increase heart rate and blood pressure, which can be concerning for those with heart conditions. Dependence and withdrawal. Regular coffee consumption can lead to caffeine dependence, with withdrawal symptoms such as headaches, fatigue, and irritability when caffeine intake is reduced. Risk of bone loss. Excessive coffee consumption, more than 4 cups per day, may interfere with calcium absorption, potentially affecting bone health, especially in those with low calcium intake. Optimal consumption. For most adults, 1 to 3 cups of coffee per day is generally considered safe and beneficial, though individual tolerance can vary.